Hey mathematicians, today what we're going to be working on is multiplying a whole number and a fraction using a model. So let's get started here with this example of 2 times 1/2. What this actually means is two groups of 1/2. So you actually have two groups of 1/2. So what might that look like? Well, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make two groups of 1/2. So as you can see, I'm drawing two whole amounts, and each one has half a group in it. Now, when I look at this as a whole amount, the denominator is 2 because in each whole amount there are two parts. And what I end up having is I end up having two pieces. So I have one piece and two pieces, which is 2/2. Now, what does that look like if we were to combine this into a new model that is a blank whole amount with two parts? Well, I can move this one, the first piece, into here, and I can move the second piece into there, and what I'm left with is one whole amount. So 2/2 equals 1, and that tells us that 2 times 1/2, or two groups of 1/2, is 1. All right, let's try another one. Again, we're multiplying a whole number and a fraction using a model. So in this case, we have 3 times 3/4, or three groups of 3/4. So what I'm going to model here is I'm going to model three groups of 3/4. So here is one group of 3/4 and another group of 3/4. This gives me two groups of 3/4, and I'm working my way towards three groups of 3/4. Now again, the denominator in a fraction tells us how many parts there are in a whole amount. In this case, in one whole amount, there are 4 pieces. And when I count how many pieces do I actually have, you can see that I've got 6, 7, 8, 9. I actually have 9/4, meaning I have 9 pieces, and there are 4 pieces in a whole amount. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to move these pieces around to try and find out exactly how many whole amounts and how many parts of another I have. So here's this one moving, a second piece, a third piece, a fourth piece. Oh, here we go. Okay, we're on to 5, 6, 7, 8. Oh, and there's one more. So I'm going to need another whole amount here. I'll divide it into 4 equal parts, and I'm going to move it in here. Now, 9/4 is an improper fraction, but when I make 9/4 here in green, you can see that I actually have two wholes and 1/4 of another whole amount. So 9/4 is equivalent, or it's the same as 2 and 1/4, which makes three groups of 3/4, 2 and 1/4. All right, we're going to try one more. This time, instead of finding a whole amount of groups, like three groups of 3/4, we're actually going to find part of a whole amount. So in this case, we're going to find 1/2 of 4. Let's see what that looks like. If I want to find half of 4, I'm going to model 4 whole amounts. I have 4 whole amounts, and I'm going to find half of it. In order to find half, I'll just split them all into half. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at how much is in all of this amount here. How many pieces do I actually have in half of 4? Well, what I know is that one whole amount is broken into 2 parts, so the denominator is 2, and I actually have 1, 2, 3, 4. I have 4/2. Well, what does 4/2 look like? As that's an improper fraction. So let's find out what it looks like as a mixed number. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to model here. I'm going to take and I'm going to move my halves into new blank models that will allow me to see how many whole amounts I've got. So there's 1. You can see I'm making 2. There's 1 whole amount. Move this one here. And move the fourth one there. Oh, look at that. I've got 2 whole amounts. So 4/2 is equivalent, or it's the same as saying 2. And that means that 1/2 times 4, or half of 4, is 2. All right, so in this lesson here, you learned that you can multiply a whole number and a fraction by using a model.